Today, Great.com talks with David Goodman, who's the CEO of Redwood Empire Food Bank. If you haven't heard of them, they are an organization who helps feed local communities in need. If you are new here, please press subscribe on YouTube or your podcast app, because today we learn why we must work together to end hunger. Hello, David, and welcome to our podcast.
Hi, it's nice to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you here, and I really look forward to sort of diving in a bit deeper with this conversation and just want to know a little bit more about your organization. So for me and anybody new here, what is Redwood Empire Food Bank and what do you do?
So we are a food bank, and here in America, there are 200 food banks that are part of Feeding America, which is a network of independent food banks. So our area of service is Northern California. So we go from 60 miles north of San Francisco along the coast, 320 miles to the Oregon border.
Wow. So what is the reason for, say, the border there? What is the reason for that? Is there other food banks in those areas that are outside of your border, say?
Yeah, so here in California, we have approximately 45 food banks throughout the states, big state. In Oregon, they have the Oregon Food Bank, and every state in the United States has food banks in them. Some have just one, some have many, etc. By the way, I wanted to make one correction. You said I'm the CEO, which is true, but actually all of us are hunger relief workers. That's how we think about it. So everybody here, we're 85 people, and everybody here is a hunger relief worker first. And then you have your official title, which just means what you're responsible for. But the overarching responsibility is just hunger relief.
Yeah, no, I really like that, David, as well. And thank you for sharing that with us. So why would you say food banks and your organization in general, why are they so important?
Well, I think that there's a misconception. I think that organizations like ours, food banks, feed the unsheltered, the homeless, that they only feed people that are poor, low-income people. And the fact is that life is difficult. And I think that here in America, you know, one of the greatest myths, I think, is that people believe that if you go to school, you get a job, and you work hard, everything's going to be okay. And the fact is that after 26 years of being a hunger relief worker, I've met thousands of people who have done all the, quote, right things and still find themselves in need. So the food bank and all food banks are really there to feed people that have nothing, all the way up to whatever it is that they need to get food assistance. And if I could just underscore that with an example, in the United States, the poverty line for a family of four is $26,500 a year. That's for four people. And people have this sense that if you're in poverty or below the poverty line, you need help. But if you're above the poverty line, you don't. But just to make the point, if you earn $26,501, I have good news for you and your family. You're no longer in poverty. So at 26,500, you're in poverty. 26,501, you're out. And it just doesn't work that way. So the food bank and all federal government programs are there to help people that are extremely low income. So where those services end, the private sector picks up. And that's what we do.
Wow, David. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. And like you say, it could be the matter of difference of a single dime or dollar, etc. So yeah, it just makes you aware that, like you said, that so many people see poverty as people who say living on the street with no clothes, food, etc. So how does say somebody that is in need, how do you serve them? What is your ways of serving, say, somebody?
Right.
What do they need to do in order to get the help they need from you guys?
Sure. So the Redwood Empire Food Bank is a little bit unusual in the world of food banking. Most food banks provide food through nonprofit organizations or faith-based organizations like churches, that kind of thing. So we are like a hub, a distribution center of food to these other nonprofit or faith-based organizations. That's how most food banks are organized. We're the opposite. So the Redwood Empire Food Bank, we're primarily direct service. So 75% of our food, we take to the people out in the community directly. We operate our own direct service programs, and we have 11. So there are programs that serve children, programs that serve seniors, programs that serve families. And so we take the food out into the community. In addition to our direct service, we also have 175 organizations that we provide food to that then also serve people. And that would be through soup kitchens, food pantries, shelters, etc. I just want to go back, if I could, by the way, to the being in need and who we serve. In Sonoma County, there are approximately 2,600 unsheltered people. We serve 100,000 people every year, throughout the year. So when people think that we only serve, the shelterless, it's actually a very small percentage of the people who come to us for help.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. And then I heard you use language. You said that we help. So who is we? Like, is it volunteers, etc.? Like, could you just explain a little bit more about who helps distribute this food?
Absolutely. So we don't do anything alone. We've never done it alone. So here at the Redwood Empire Food Bank, we're 85 people that are full-time employed. And we have this past year about 9,300 volunteers throughout the year. So without volunteerism, we don't get anything done. So the we is basically our supporters, our volunteers, our food donors, and the staff. The remarkable staff, I should add.
Yeah, and like you said, remarkable, because it's so nice just to realize that there's so many people out there that are willing to give up their time to help others that are in need as well. So David, so since its founding in 1987, what have been some of your greatest challenges and struggles, and how did you overcome them?
Well, when I first started here, we were approximately 13 people, staff, with a budget of approximately $1.1 million annually. And now we're 85 staff. And I've been here for 21 years. We have 85 staff, and our budget this year is looking like approximately, what is it going to be this year? It is going to be approximately $18 million. So we have grown over the years as the need has grown and as our community has grown, and our ability as an organization to meet the needs has grown. I can tell you that I'm really not concerned about fundraising, which all nonprofits are. I mean, we need to raise money, but as a food bank, the most unnerving part of our work is the food, because we're a food bank, and without food, we're entirely irrelevant. So even if we had a lot of money, just buying food, that's not how we stretch resources here. We stretch resources by handling donated food and volunteerism. And so without an abundance of donated food, we're really not a tremendous stretch of resources. But currently, with the largesse of the generous people that support us, for every single dollar we spend, we distribute $4 worth of food. That's a pretty good, it's a pretty good stretch. I think we'd all like to have that in our lives. For every dollar we spend, we get $4 back. Pretty good.
Definitely, I'm sure everybody would want that, as to say. And yeah, no, that's amazing, and it sounds like you're doing really great things. So, what would you say, David, are some of the biggest needs of the individuals that you support and serve, and how are you part of meeting their needs and their desires, I guess?
Well, the fact is that the people that we help are just like you and me and every one of your listeners. They're just people. And the one thing that they don't have is enough money. So they have to make very difficult decisions. You know, you don't get to negotiate with the gas station attendant to say, hey, I'm a little short on cash. How about if instead of $5 a gallon today, I just spend $3? That's not the way it works. And so you have to pay your rent, you have to pay your utilities, you know, you have to pay your insurance, you have to do all these different things. There are really two areas that are sort of discretionary expenses in this world, and that is healthcare and food. And really they're one and the same. So our effort is to provide people with a significant amount of food, what we call a provision of help, so that people can take their limited resources and redirect them to the other areas of their lives where they have to pay the bills. You know, I wanted to mention to you one of the things that's happened here, especially in Northern California, over the past few years, is we're no stranger to disasters. So we've had, maybe you've seen the coverage of these large wildland fires where 5,000 homes burned, and now with the global pandemic of the coronavirus, you know, we saw our food distribution double in 1 year because of the coronavirus. And so one of the silver linings of disaster is it's sort of the great equalizer. So normally people in a community see people that are in need of help as the less fortunate, people that are low income, that are poor, that are shelterless, as we've talked about. But what happens in a disaster is people are just comfortable in their home, comfortable in their job, comfortable in their bed, and all of a sudden the fire alarms go off, the sirens go off, they smell smoke, their company shut down because of the coronavirus, and literally within the blink of an eye, they find themselves in need. They don't think of themselves as poor. They're not poor. They don't think of themselves as in need, but literally in a moment, they find themselves in need because they were living on the edge, or they were living what we would call paycheck to paycheck. But that doesn't mean they're poor. And so it's been a really interesting time in the arc of our history for people to really, what is the most important thing of all is to acquire empathy. So sympathy is one thing, and you can feed a lot of people with sympathy, but when you have empathy, when you acquire empathy from a community, it means that they can put themselves in the shoes of others. And that's where you can really make some changes and help people.
Yeah, no, I really liked what you just said there, David, as well, because when you do have that empathy for others, especially like you say in times of struggle, when COVID, for instance, or even the wildfires, when individuals and communities can come together and show each other, say, that empathy and lend that helping hand, because like you said, some people are living paycheck to paycheck and they don't think they need until suddenly something happens where they find themselves in need. So yeah, that's when communities, I guess they need to then work together and come together. So that was sort of around sort of a question I was going to ask you next anyway, about the COVID situation. And you did mention how it sort of doubled, the needs doubled, etc. So the question was going to be sort of what are the negatives from the COVID, but what also are the positives that you've managed to take from this COVID situation?
Well, the negatives of COVID, we had to really redesign the aircraft while we were flying. So you can imagine that we have thousands of volunteers coming in normally, and suddenly we had to protect our facility, our staff from everybody getting sick here. We had to find a location to have our thousands of volunteers helping. We had to have our safe distancing of 6 feet, which means we had to have large spaces. So we took all of our operation and moved it outside underneath these big event tents, like 50-foot by 100-foot tents where we could spread people out. All food had to be in boxes, and still does, by the way, had to be in boxes. So rather than just having sort of what we call a client choice model, where people come up with and receive a bag and they can select items, this looked more like a pit stop at a NASCAR or a Formula One race, where literally cars were lined up by the hundreds, and maybe you've seen it in the news. and they would pull up, they'd pop their doors in their trunk, and volunteers would then put boxes or bags of food in their trunk or in their back seat. They would roll forward to the next stop, number 2, more food would go in, number 3, and then we'd shut everything up and send them away. And that's what we call drive-through distributions. That model has changed the entire way in which we coordinate hunger relief for the time being, and we may never go back. I mean, ironically, in my world, you know, the dignity comes in client choice where people can pick the food that they want. But then there's this other dignity that exists of people not having to stand in line and wait for food, where they can just drive through. There's a little bit more anonymity and people can come through and know it's not everything that they chose, but they also are busy. I mean, everybody's busy. I mean, you think that people that come for food assistance don't have anything better to do, but I'd argue that most people who come for food assistance probably have 1, 2, or 3 jobs. They got to get back to work. So it's not like they have all this free time on their hands. The reason they're here for, you know, for food for free is because they simply don't have enough money to buy it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there, because there are fors and against. Say, for instance, it's you needed to say the bigger spaces, but then also you can now say get people the food straight in and away for them to say if they need to go back to jobs, etc. Because how you just explained it, these people could potentially be working 2 or 3 jobs, so they don't want to be, say, stood in queues waiting around all day. So yeah, there's definitely fors and against there for the COVID situation.
Yeah.
So what would, say, David, off the top of your head, been one of your greatest success stories?
Well, okay, so I'm going, this September 11 will be 26 years that I've been a hunger relief worker, and I do it in the context of food banking. And the easy answer, the sort of the media answer is, well, you know, I've had the good fortune to feed millions of people over the time. And that's sort of like the expected answer, I think. But the truth is that I'm most proud of having the opportunity to set up an organization where 85 people come to work and thrive, that they are happy and proud to be here. Now, granted, everybody would rather go play. I'd rather go play. But if you're going to come to work, which most people have to work, you want to enjoy it. And the fact that we have a culture here where they work hard. I mean, just to underscore the point, when COVID hit over a year and a half ago, I invited everybody to go home. Everybody was frightened. Nobody really knew much about it at the time. I invited everybody to go home. And the fact is that only one person went home. And the rest of the people stayed throughout the year and went out in the field. We're all out in the field. So we're all masked. We're seeing thousands of people. There's a higher degree of risk. And you know, just the fact that that I've had a hand in creating that kind of environment, that kind of culture, that is what I'm most proud of.
Yeah, thank you so much. And again, what really stood out for me there was you obviously invited people to go home, because it was, say, that feeling of uncertainty and fear was there, obviously. And only one person went. So it just goes to show as well the commitment from your staff and the willingness to help others that are in need too. So it goes back to that empathy too. So that's really nice to hear that. So just sort of finishing this up now, David, what is your vision for the future?
Well, I would like to ensure our mission is to end hunger in our community. And for us, you know, I used to go out and do public speaking. And I would say, how many people in the room here think that we can end hunger? And none of the hands would go up. And then I'd put up a PowerPoint slide of Neil Armstrong on the moon and say, well, you know, we put a man on the moon, we could end hunger. But the fact is, it's actually harder to end hunger than it is to put a man on the moon. That hunger has been with humanity since the beginning. And so our definition of ending hunger in our community is ensuring that anyone who is hungry can get help. Because once somebody is hungry and they can get food, they're no longer hungry. So there are always going to be new hungry people. So now I go out and ask how many people think we can respond to the needs of hungry people, and all the hands go up, because it's a different question than ending it. And so our goal is just to ensure that anyone in our community who needs food assistance can get the help that they need any day of the week. That for us is realizing our mission of ending hunger in our community. And that's the goal. And that is difficult to sustain because you need the food, you need the funding, and the need is growing all the time.
Yeah, that's an absolutely amazing vision and mission, somewhere to head towards as well. So for anybody, say, listening today, what can somebody do to help, and what action steps can they take to be a part of the solution?
Well, since you are global and we are local, I would just say that find your local hunger relief organization. You know, there are many complex problems in this world, but the beauty of hunger relief is it's as simple as giving somebody food. So to the extent that you can help, whether it's a food donation, your time, or a financial donation, begin. You know, my favorite poem of all is To Begin, and it just goes to begin. So just get involved. I think that's the place to start.
Yeah, and again, I totally agree with you, David, about people just getting involved. So say, for instance, somebody's watching this and they wanted to reach out to you, or they were listening to this and wanted to reach out to you and your organization. What is the best way for them to contact you or look up a bit more about what you guys do?
Sure. Well, the easiest way to find us is to go onto the World Wide Web and do a search for Redwood Empire Food Bank. There you'll find out everything you need to know about our organization.
Thank you, David, so much. Thank you. I really appreciate you for being here today.
Well, I appreciate your time and attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And for you listening, if you've enjoyed this episode, please press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app. That will show the algorithms that this is an important conversation, so more people can learn how we can work together to combat hunger in our local communities.